Welcome back. If you just joined us, our guest on this episode of Question Time is the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General of the Federation, Malam Abubakar Malami. And we're looking at the federal government's effort in the recovery of stolen funds and the federal government's anti-graft war. Stay with us. Looking at the DSS reports now, it borders mainly on integrity. One is alleged complicity in the arms panel reports, and also the extravagant cost of house rentage, and also hiding of some files which the former EFCC chairman, Farida Waziri, had to investigate. Now, with the issue of integrity, of alleged integrity, questionable integrity now, do you think the EFCC chairman's office would aid the success of your ministry, and especially the prosecution of the war against corruption?
Well, naturally, we have a common agenda, and that agenda is that of fighting corruption. And as you rightly observe, all other agencies of government have keyed into it. EFCC, ICPC, DSS, they all have actively participated and key into the agenda as it relates to the fighting of corruption.
Now the acting EFCC's chairman's confirmation has been rejected twice by the Senate, but he is saying that he is still in charge of the EFCC, pending the time the presidency says otherwise. So what is the status quo of Mr. Ibrahim Magu in the eye of the law?
Again, the background of the constitutional right of the president as it relates to the appointment or otherwise of the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, I wouldn't like to preempt the position of the presidency over that.
Let's examine the Presidential Anti-Corruption Committee. What difference has it really made now in terms of fighting corruption?
Well, you see, the issue that has to do with the appointment of judges or special courts are constitutional and legal. But within the context of the document, you are talking about the major consideration is that of expeditious determination of cases. So at the level of the Federal Ministry of Justice, what we have tried to do is to look at the possibility of working with the judiciary to have special divisions within the existing framework, while at the same time pursuing the possibility of constitutional amendments as it relates to specialized courts that are to deal with corruption cases. The idea of having special divisions within the court system is paying off. Of recent, the Chief Judge of the FCT has made provision for, I think, 4 or 5 judges of the FCT High Court to address the cases relating to the terrorism cases, and the judges are any moment from now going to be sitting in KNG and associated locations where we have higher concentration of insurgents.
You talked about the National Prosecution Team, but recently you sacked a member of this prosecution team. Some people feel that could this be a setback, but could you get your view to put things into proper perspective?
Yes, indeed, but then not members. Only one member, I think, was sacked. And the truth of the matter is, at the point of their recruitment and engagement, the forms were made available to them to disclose, to make certain disclosures. And then there existed a fundamental conflict of interest situation as it relates to the mandate of the National Prosecution Team, and one of the cases been handled by the lawyer or the counsel that was indeed sacked, which was not disclosed at the point of engagement.
Let's also quickly look at the Presidential Interagency Committee on AMCON's loan recovery. So how much has been recovered so far?
Well, one thing I can tell you clearly that we are making progress in that respect, and then the cases are being profiled with a view to identify those ones that could be settled amicably, to identify those ones that could only be settled through litigation, and then to look at the possibility, a composite possibility of expeditious determination of issues.
But how much has your ministry, the Ministry of Justice, recovered now? Because we understand that your ministry is also involved in the recovery of stolen funds.
Well, we have done a great deal in terms of recoveries, even though at the expense of not being very good with figures. I can recall very well that at a point we made about $10.5 million recoveries. We equally made about 10.7 million naira, 10.7 billion naira recoveries of recent. There were recoveries that have been made, I think, worth about $136 million. And then there are certain petty recoveries that came in millions, perhaps. And then I can equally recall additional 1.2 billion or so recoveries.
But what are the source of these funds and who are the culprits?
Well, as it is now, it will be out of place for me to jump to that conclusion because some of them have been profiled as it relates to the possibility of formal forfeiture from the culprits. Some of them are subject matters of litigations, and it will be out of place to preempt the judicial litigation arising therefrom.
You listed the 50 billion naira down payment of the MTN's fine as part of the recovery of stolen funds, but that wasn't a stolen fund, that was a fine.
Well, within the context of the fact that it constituted a subject matter of litigation, and then arising from that litigation, payment was made, it could constitute part of recoveries because you have to make payment for the law firms that were involved in the process of the payment.
What are those funds recovered used for? What are they channeled into?
Whatever recoveries are made naturally goes into the consolidated revenue account as it relates to those recoveries over which there exists no pending litigation, no issues. They goes into the consolidated revenue account.
The current anti-graft campaign has been accused of severely being selective and politically motivated because none of the members of the party, the high-ranking members of the party and members of the executive having corrupt cases have been prosecuted to a logical end.
Well, my response to that is the fight against corruption is not selective. The fight against corruption is indeed focused. The truth of the matter is it is all encompassing, it is not selective, and it is indeed focused. That is my conclusion arising therefrom.
But Nigerians will not agree with you on this because yet we still have members of the executive that you mentioned that they are members of the executive being prosecuted, but none of these cases have been brought to and your office is being accused of deliberately delaying this.
No, there are some that are brought to logical conclusion even as at 2 weeks.
Members of this administration?
Generally speaking. Even
we are talking about members of this administration.
Who are the members of this administration that are being prosecuted?
But Nigerians will not agree with that because they are saying that none of these cases regarding top members of the APC or members of the executive, you mentioned that there are members of the executive being prosecuted, but none of these cases have been brought to a logical conclusion. So the public is suspecting that your office is trying to frustrate some of these cases.
Investigation could take a longer period of time, but one thing this administration do not do is the idea of taking a case to court without being conclusive in its investigation.
Before we wind down on this conversation now, so much anxiety concerning the preservation and upholding of the rule of law. So what are you doing to assure Nigerians that the rule of law would reign supreme?
The public interest should reign supreme over and above the individual interest.
The Honorable Minister of Justice and the Attorney General of the Federation, Malam Abubakar Malami, thank you so much for joining us on this, for making our time to be part of this episode of Question Time. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
And that's it on this episode of Question Time. Is the fight against corruption a national cause or being politically motivated? Send us your comments on our various social media platforms showing on your screen. Join us next week on another exciting episode of the show on Channels Television. Many thanks for watching. I'm Benga Ashuru. Bye for now.